Okay, now we want to do some rotations other than 90 degrees and moving our origin point to somewhere other than the corner of a part. Let's say we were going to machine chamfer, a 1/2-inch chamfer on the side of this part using the end of a 2-inch face mill. Well, what we would do then is we're going to orient to something that makes sense for this. In this particular case, I'm not going to take an origin point to a corner. I'm going to go to the edge of the feature that I'm machining. So in this case, I want to do a 1/2-inch chamfer on the edge of the part. I'm going to stop a 1/2 inch shy of the edge of the block. So when I put my x-axis origin point in, I'm not going to go the full 3 inches all the way over to the side. I'm only going to go 2.5 inches. Then I'm going to move my 3 inches negative towards the front of the block, and I'm not going to move 0 at all because I'm already on the same surface that I want to machine my feature. So my new origin point is going to be where that red arrow is pointing. It's going to be a positive 2.5 inches in X, a negative 3 inches in Y, and a 0 in Z. Now it's important that you realize that once we get to that location, that is where the rotation happens. It doesn't happen just around the original 0. It doesn't happen around the center of the block. The rotation happens at the point where your new origin point is created. Here we see that I've moved over to that corner. Then I rotated 45 degrees positive, which is around the Y, or to the right side around the Y-axis, and then I will program. Notice what happened to the X. It also rotated, much like it did in our first example. It rotated 45 degrees also. So that's our X positive direction along the edge of that chamfer. So let's go ahead and program that. What would that look like? Well, first of all, I'm going to go to my transform plane end. Again, that is the end of my previous feature on the front side of the part. When I ended it, I went back to the top center. So all of my rotations, all of my transform planes are now ended, and everything's reverting back to the original part 0. So I'm going to go to my next block. It's going to be another transform plane. So I go to my rotary menus, I select transform plane, and I put those values in that I just talked about. I'm going to go 2.5 positive in X, minus 3-inch negative in Z, or Y, and I'm not moving Z at all. Z is going to stay on that top surface. And then I'm going to rotate 45 degrees positive around the Y-axis. Again, I moved over to the edge positive in X, to the far left side of that orange feature. I went from the center of the block 2.5 inches to that edge. Then I came along that edge towards me, the operator, negative 3 inches in Y, and I didn't move in Z. When I got there, I rotated positive 45 degrees to orient the tool into the position you see. Now once I'm there, I'm going to mill using lines and arcs. The very edge of that is my 0. So I'm going to leave my X at 0. I'm going to use the center of the tool and run the center of that tool down along the what is now my new 0 point. So I'm going to leave X at 0, and I'm going to start at the end closest to me. So my Y is going to be minus, let's do 1.5 inches just to make sure that tool is starting off the part. Maybe I'll start at 0.1, but I'm going to end at 0. Now this is another thing that's hard for people to understand. My Z0 is now that corner where those 3 lines converge, where those 3 X, Y, and Z coordinate lines converge. So when I rotated 45 degrees, that just created that orange plane as my 0. So I'm going to machine down to a Z0 and create that surface. So if I was going to drill or mill pockets or something on that orange surface later on, it's very important that that becomes my 0, and I've established that. So that's what I've done here. So I'm going to start at 100th thou above. I'm going to end at Z0. I'm going to use a tool 5, which I think is my, nope. I'm going to select tool from list. I'll find the face mill here of 2 inches. And I'm going to leave that on. My cutter comp I'm going to leave on because I just want to take the center of that tool and drive it along this line that I'm creating. Next segment is going to be a line going from the negative 1.5 in Y all the way across the part to a 7.5 positive in Y. Oops, my 0. X is still 0. 7.5 in Y. And then my next block is going to be my transform plane end. Transform plane end. Now what that'll give me is the same feature that we just saw in the previous slide, programming from that corner, starting on the side, the front side, off the part, transversing in the positive Y towards the back side and off the part. So that's how you program something when you want to use the end of the part and it's not at a 90-degree angle.